All right. All right, brilliant. Well, again, welcome. I mean, as you all know, we're going to be talking about the Solihull Fairer Futures Fund today. And before I get into any detail about the fund itself, I will just give a very brief introduction to Heart of England Foundation itself, just so that for those who haven't worked with us before, have a better idea about who we are and what we do. I know that some of you have worked with us before. I see some familiar faces around there. So just so everybody knows, we are a independent charity founded in 1995, and we're a part of a network of 47 other community organisations around the UK. So we each have our patch, and ours is the West Midlands. And so we raise money to support mainly smaller community organisations around this area, which go through the West Midlands and Warwickshire as well. And outside of any specific funds that we normally run, like this one, for example, as we do in collaborations, or more to do with actuality, like during COVID or the cost of living crisis, most of our general funds work alongside four main themes, which are health and well-being, stronger communities, which can mean reducing isolation and discrimination, for example, also employment, training and improving skills, and finally, arts, culture and heritage. And so those are the main themes that cover most of our general funds. And those general funds, I won't go into detail about today, just because, you know, we're going to concentrate on the one that everybody's interested in hearing about. But if you do want to know anything about other funds that we manage for Solihull, or even regionally speaking, then we can have a chat about that as well at the end. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to know, then I'm here for that. All right, well, without any further ado, let's dive into the Solihull Fairer Futures Fund. And so just to give you a bit of context, I mean, as Jade already did, but Birmingham and Solihull Integrated Care System have set out a series of quite huge ambitions, really, to transform how health and social care services run in the area. And so this will be translated through funding activities that contribute to improving health outcomes and tackling inequality through them. And so this can mean improving population health and healthcare. So it could be taking some stress off national health services, for example, tackling unequal outcomes and access, meaning improving accessibility to various services, whether it's for individuals with disabilities or learning difficulties or anything like that. It can also mean enhancing productivity and value, which can translate to improving volunteering programs or training programs and things like that. And finally, as you can see there, supporting the broader social and economic development of Solihull, which speaks for itself and remains quite a general aim as well for you to look into when it comes to Solihull itself. This fund does also look into priorities that are very local to Solihull, which I'll talk about in a second. But first, I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of the technicalities of this fund when it comes to what you'll be applying for. So with this fund, you can apply to up to £10,000, which is a nice amount indeed. But one thing I would say now, and something to keep in mind when you are looking to apply, is that, of course, you can apply for up to 10,000, but please only apply for what you need in that sense, because quite often when we have funds like this, we have lots of groups applying for the full amount, but panels can tell that they've looked at the full amount and then designed their project in relation to that amount, rather than calculating what they need and letting that fit into that sum. Just to know, because of course, as you can see, there are lots of people in this video call today. So there are lots of community organizations looking into funds like this and with lots of good ideas and very valuable projects that they'd like to be able to deliver. And so we do have a very good budget for this particular fund, but we have to think about trying to support as many organizations as possible as well through that. So just try and keep that in mind, as it were. Finally, well, we can deliver the project over 18 months, which is a bit longer than what we normally set out for most of our funds, which is normally about a year. So this is actually quite a good amount of time for groups to really think about what they'd like to be doing and deliver it over a substantial amount of time. So I think some real good can be done with that time frame. And quite obviously in this case, projects here have to be delivered in Solihull, have to be directed for Solihull residents. And that doesn't mean that if you are an organisation from outside of Solihull or even outside the West Midlands, it doesn't mean that you can't apply, but it does mean that when you apply, you would have to demonstrate that you have strong links within the community of Solihull. This is just simply mostly really to make sure that you're not duplicating any activities that are already taking place in the area, just through lack of knowing the dynamic of what's happening. So that's really just the reason, because it does happen quite a lot when we do question, how much organizations do know about the area itself, especially for a fund like this, which is so intrinsically linked with what's actually going on in the area. So very, very simply, that this fund also aims to align with Solihull's local priorities, which are tripartite in this case. Firstly, through the integration of services in the community, to making sure that people understand how to get urgent help, making sure that the most vulnerable people receive the care they need, reducing unnecessary emergency attendance. This goes back to also taking weight off national health services, because we've heard a lot of issues that have been happening recently, especially, and making sure we can do everything we can to support people staying well. The second priority is improving the approach of prevention and early help, which links itself with the first one, really. And finally, anything supporting mental health, including, especially children, young people, maternity and parenting, which again goes back to these more vulnerable individuals, as it were. So that's most of what you need to know really about the fund. I would also, always advise you to go and have a look at the fund fact sheet itself on our website, because that fund fact sheet goes into more detail about the specific outcomes that this fund is also looking for. And you can have a look at that fund fact sheet and see where you think that your project would align well with what's said there. Because something that we always advise applicants to do is almost take the words from the fund fact sheet, meaning taking the criteria and the objectives of the fund and inserting them back into their application and showing how those objectives are reflected and answered by the projects that you're trying to deliver. And that will always shine through in that sense. So that's that. Good thing is to talk about eligibility as well. I'll talk to you about it in a more general sense, but also more specifically concerning this fund, because each of our funds do have different criteria. Most of them are quite generalized, really, but occasionally different funds have specific elements that they like to look into. And so the first question is, what type of organization are you? This particular fund will support most kinds of organizations. So that means you can be a charity, a company, an unincorporated group, a social enterprise, and the list goes on quite far. There are other types of organizations that we don't tend to support, which tend to be individuals, sports clubs, churches and schools and things like that. There can be exceptions depending on how the group is formed. But again, these lists, which are both quite long, more long when it comes to actually supporting a group, which is good. Both of them are available on the fund fact sheet. So again, it's always good to have a look just in case you are a particular kind of organization and you're not quite sure if you'd fit into those lists. So just have a look at that. When it comes to how much you need, of course, as I've said before, for this fund, you can apply to up to £10,000, which is brilliant. Another thing that we check for one of the first things we look at actually when we receive an application is that the group that has applied has 3 unrelated directors or trustees, or of course just members of the management committee, of course in the case of smaller groups or unconstituted ones. And this is just simply for good practice. It's something that we always look at, and it is a very hard rule in that sense, because if you don't have properly registered directors or trustees, especially as a company or a charity, then that's something that needs to be sorted out before being able to receive any funding from us. Do you have the necessary documents in place is another question. When you fill in the application form online, you will be able to fill it all in, and at the bottom you have a space to attach any documents that you want to supply your application with. And we ask for a series of documents that are quite run of the mile, really, which are your governing documents, which can be in any form it comes, depending on how officialized your organization is and how large. So yes, your governing documents, your policies, which are an equal opportunities policy and a safeguarding vulnerable adults or children's policy, depending on who you work with, or it can be both, or whatever comes. We also ask for a list of your committee members, and that is to check the point that's above, to check that you do have 3 unrelated directors, trustees, or members of your management committee. And finally, we ask for your most recent set of accounts, which is just for us to also get a better idea of your organization's financial health, but also to know what kind of size of organization we're dealing with as well in that way. And we also ask for a bank statement, but that's for later on if the grant comes through, which we all hope it does, of course. Another element that we look at is annual income, because some of our funds, I mean, most of our funds actually have a limit of £500,000, which may seem a lot to some organizations and may seem quite small for others. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we do tend to work with smaller organizations. So a cap of 500,000 is actually quite high for Heart of England Foundation. Some of our other funds, for example, have a limit of 200,000, 250,000, things like that. So again, that's something that will always be in the fund fact sheet that you're applying to. Again, I'm talking about this as if you're applying for this Fairer Futures Fund, but also in mind if you're thinking about applying to anything else. So again, just something to have a quick check of when you're looking to apply. And finally, the question would be how many grants you currently have active with the foundation. So our general rule is if you are a new organisation, not a new organisation, but it is your first time working with Heart of England, you can have up to 2 active grants in the first year that you'd be participating with us. So this means that you could have a grant from Fairer Futures Fund and a grant from another one, but a whole year would have to go past and we would have to receive your end of grant monitoring report before being able to open you up to any more funding. So that's the general rule. But if you have had grants from us in the past and we have a working relationship already, that number is unlimited in the sense that you can have one grant from each different fund as many times as you like, but only 1 grant per fund per year, if that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions about these little details at the end, absolutely shoot. All right, very simply, how to apply. How do we go about looking into this? Quite simply, all of our application forms are online. So at the moment, you go onto our website, select the fund, and you have a link, for example, to the Fairer Futures Fund on our website at the moment. And it's on that link as well that you can find the fund fact sheets and by there an apply button so that you can reach the online form. For now, for this fund, there is no deadline because panels will be meeting monthly, which is quite good actually, because most of our other funds panels meet perhaps once every 2 months or quarterly. So you will be able to get a response fairly quickly with this fund, which is brilliant. The reason why it says for now is that at the moment we have a set budget for this fund, and once we get to half that, we will have another look at the criteria and see how things are going, just to recalculate potentially, how we'd like to pursue it. Just again to make sure that we're supporting as many groups as possible and setting it out in time in a logical way as well. But that's something no one else to worry about for now. And anyone who's looking into applying will be notified of any changes that occur at that time. So no worries for now. It's you can keep it simple. Of course, again, your supporting documents will need to be attached to the application at the end of the form online. Normally, there's absolutely no issue in doing that. Sometimes with internet issues and things like that, it can be a little bit more difficult, or depending on the format of the documents that you have. But if you do have any issues attaching the documents, just give us a call and we can sort out a way. Either you can submit the application without the documents and just email them to us, or whatever comes, but there's always a solution anyway. As it says there, the assessment and sending those documents to a panel takes around 10 weeks, which is around about the turnaround that we'd have normally. For this fund, as panels are meeting monthly, it may even be shorter than that. It just depends also. I mean, because I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, but I will be the one assessing the applications for this fund. So it depends how efficient I am, which I will try to be as much as possible, of course. And yes, and then of course I did mention very briefly the end of grant monitoring reports, which is something that all organisations who apply to not only Heart of England but any funder in general have to submit at the end of the grant period. And this is not only for us to see how your project has gone, but it is also a good way for you to present that to us and send us case studies and things like that we can then potentially publicize on our website or talk about on social media. And so it's also a good way for you to get some visibility if that's what you wanted. So we have an absolutely marvelous marketing officer who makes everything absolutely beautiful. So it's always a good option. Some hints and tips, as we like to say. When it comes to supporting documents, I would have to say that that's probably the one thing that causes delays in the application and assessment process. Because of course, if we receive an application without all of the supporting documents, or with supporting documents but that are missing elements or that aren't quite what we asked for, things like that, then we have to come back to you and ask for them again. And it's depending on how quickly you want things to advance. Also translate to how efficiently you want to think about providing those kinds of documents, because they are important for our entire due diligence process. So just have a think about those. Checking essential information. That's just the essential information part on our website, actually. And we've only put it here because we quite recently got together as a team, as the grants team in particular, to go over all of the typical questions that we tend to receive from applicants in all different types of situations, not only applying to specific funds like this, but very generally as well. And so hopefully, if you do have a question, the chances is that your answer would be there. But of course, if it's not, which you may have a very original question, which is brilliant as well. Again, I encourage you to just give us a call or email us, because we are quite a friendly bunch, and yeah, we'll always be very, very happy to answer any questions and guide you in the right way, as it were. Save your work. It sounds a bit silly, but it is quite a valid point, because I can't count the number of applicants who have started filling in an application form, put in loads of information, to then close the page by accident and lose their work, which is a shame, because a lot of you I know are volunteers and have other things to do as well. So it's one of those that is very important, and it does work quite well. As in, when you open up the application form in the first place, when you fill in some of the information, when you save it, you'll be sent an email with a link to the application form, so that you can access it whenever you want and continue it in your own time. One other thing is that when you do put your email address in at the beginning, make sure that there are no typos. So that has happened as well. I wouldn't mention it otherwise, trust me. But anyway, so there. Another one is, again, depending on your experience of grant writing, if you've written many bids in the past, then you might not need to go and ask a friend about it. But I would say if you're definitely new to this, it's a good idea to ask somebody that doesn't know much about your organization or know about the projects that you're trying to put on, but just to read through your application and see if it makes sense to them. It might sound silly, but when we're writing about something that, one, we're passionate about, and two, we know a lot about because we're working on it every day, we can tend to go a little bit all over the place and lose the point of the information that we're trying to impart. So yeah, it's always just good to have a good read of it in a very independent kind of sense, just to make sure that people understand, and that goes the same with don't assume knowledge. When I'm reading your applications, and especially when panel members are reading your applications, they might not know your organization. We do know a lot about the regions that we work in, but we don't know everything, because I don't think that would ever be possible. But so yes, it's good to, again, try and make sure everything is just as clear as possible, and so that there's no confusion, really. I mean, if I do have any questions when I write the assessment, I will give you a ring and we can have a talk about it to make things a bit more clear. But of course, again, that's another step that can slow the process down as well. So that's just the best way to try and think about it anyway from the get-go. And finally, demonstration of need. And I would say this one is particularly important, especially in the context of this Fairer Futures Fund, because it is so, again, intrinsically linked with the services available in the area. It's just, if you tell us exactly where the need is and give us a response to that through things like having talked to people, having presented the idea to residents, or having run a pilot project, for example, those are all things that very quickly catch the attention of both panel members and assessors like me, because we can see straight away that you know exactly what you're talking about, and that you are actually responding to something that you've seen evidenced in reality. So it's, again, it sounds silly to have to remind people of it, but quite often we forget to show why we're doing these things and really give that proper founding to our presentations. So there we go. So that's more or less it, really. I don't know if you'd like any questions, or if you'd like me to talk about any other funds or whatever, but absolutely shoot whenever you'd like to
Ray, do you want to stop sharing so we all come back together? That's great.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much, Freya, for taking us through that. So any questions for Freya?
I don't know. Was I really that clear? Goodness me. Brilliant.
Just to say, we will circulate the presentation. It sounds like, Freya, if people have got further questions, or Alina's got a question coming in, and Kerry, that there's opportunities to ask them. But let's just hear from Aline first, and then we'll go over to Kerry. So Aline, over to you.
Thanks, Jane. And hi, everyone. Freya, one question around the number of grants that we have potentially through the foundation. May that be a hindrance in terms of if we have 2 or 3 or 1, may that contribute to the acceptability of an application or not?
No, not at all. I mean, of course, Menopause and ICS has already received grants from this, as we know. And that just means that you can only have 1 grant per fund. So, for example, you couldn't submit 2 applications to the Fairer Futures Fund and have 2 grants. It would be, a grant from this fund, and if you're already a holder of a grant from a different fund, that's absolutely fine. That's it doesn't affect it in any kind of way. You could have 5 active grants with us by now, and that's absolutely fine. So don't worry about that.
An additional, thank you, Freya. An additional question, and just in case that might be the case for some of us, as the fund hasn't got an end date in terms of its run at the moment, what if someone completes a project in, say, 12 months? Would they be able afterwards to apply again for a different project under the Fairer Future Fund?
And sorry, could you repeat that bit? I didn't hear.
Yes, if someone obtains funding for, say, 12 months, deliver in 12 months, and after that have another project, would they then be able to apply again?
Yeah. A year later, they would be able to apply again. That's no problem. Of course, if there is still budget and depending on all of those other questions. But yes, in theory, there's absolutely no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Aline. Over to Kerry then.
Hi, I'll turn my video on now. Hi, Freya. Can I just ask, are the funders have kind of allowed us to sort of bring up their grant officers with an idea before we start on the application, just to see if it is something that will be eligible for the project? Would that be something that you would do, or is it somebody else that we'd need to contact?
No, of course, you can definitely get in touch with us before. We actually get lots of queries like that, actually. Most of the calls that we receive are people saying, all right, we've got this idea for this project, but we'd like to do this. Could you take me through the funds that you've got available and see what would be best? And so it might even be that we'd redirect you to a different fund, because as I was saying at the beginning, there are quite a few different more general funds as well that will support health and well-being and things that are quite similar to what's pinpointed in this one. But if you didn't meet the criteria to a certain extent or whatever, then there's always leeway for us to talk about other options too. So yeah, I'd actually encourage it, even if if you're not sure, if you have questions, then definitely, and I'll be able to tell you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Freya while we've got her?
Gone with the wind, I'll be.
But there will be the other opportunities to speak with Freya if need be.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, anytime you call the organisation, you can ask for me, and I'll be around.
Okay, thank you ever so much, Freya, for your time.
No problem. Pleasure.
Okay, well, for those of you who have just come for Fairer Futures Fund, we're just going to go on to a few updates around the integrated care system. So you're welcome to leave if you don't want to hear those. So just a few items. So I mentioned before that there is a VCSE Leadership Alliance. So that has the Birmingham and Solihull representatives and has Chet and Kerry who attend that meeting. So usually those meetings are for the members of that group. at the next meeting, there is going to be the opportunity for the first hour of the meeting to hear from Dr. Justin Varney, who is Director of Public Health for Birmingham, and he is going to take people through the Birmingham and Solihull ICS 10-year strategy. So that's at 1:30 on the 5th of July. So invites will be going out around that. So that's just to let you know about that. One of the places where collaboration is working really well and connections to the integrated care system is around mental health and the Mental Health Collective. So I'm just going to turn over now to Evan Grant to give us any sort of updates around that work. So over to you, Evan.
Jane, thanks very much. Oh, that was Freya waving goodbye. So thanks for that introduction. So the Mental Health Collective aims to be the community for Birmingham and Solihull, voluntary community, faith and social enterprise, mental health and wellbeing organisations. So basically third sector mental health and wellbeing in Birmingham and Solihull. We now have 118 members and it's great to see many on the call here now. And as a collective, we elected a panel of 10 people, a chair and a deputy chair. So the chair is Helen Wadley of Birmingham Mind. The deputy chair is Clive Whitaker of Change Brief Therapy. And the panel members include Heather Delaney and Cheryl Shine from Solihull, Shine Youth and Solihull Parent Carer Voice. And that panel sits as one of the governance committees in the new Mental Health Provider Collaborative. So just summarising that first point, the collective's up and running and has elected a panel to represent the sector into the governance of the Mental Health Collective. That alone is a good step, but it's only an enabling step. And in addition to having that governance group, if you like, members of the panel also sit on all the other key committees within the Mental Health Provider Collaborative. So it's a really good, strong sign that the voluntary sector is wired into how the new Mental Health Provider Collaborative runs. But I stress it's only a first step, it's an enabling step. So there's a couple of requests I'd like to make. Of the 118 members, 55 operate in Birmingham and Solihull or some parts of Birmingham and Solihull. That's 47%. And 15 operate in Solihull only. That is 13%. So it's a better representation of Solihull than we've had in equivalent bodies in the past, but there's still room to get more. So one of my pleas is to find other organisations locally that might join the collective to add weight to the Solihull voice within the Mental Health Collective for Birmingham and Solihull. And related but different, one of the things that we do as a collective is send out a weekly update. And so that'll include, Jane, for example, the Justin Varney's presentation at 1:30 on the 5th and these sort of things. And I'm quite conscious that when I send out these weekly updates, it's almost all dominated by things people tell me about Birmingham. So in addition to finding new Solihull-based members, I'm very keen that we get Solihull News to communicate as well, because I think it's, for whatever reason, it's quite light in that. So that's two requests, to please find new members to join. It's free. I hope everyone that's already a member would agree it's worthwhile being a member. So it's free and it's easy to join, and also a request to get news about what's happening in Solihull. So of course, the Fairest Future Fund is something that we included in, I think it was a couple of weeks ago when it became public. So that's it. More members and more news, please. And I'll put some links in the chat. And if anyone's got any questions, please fire away.
Thank you ever so much, Evan. Yeah, I mean, it is great to hear the progress that is being made around the Mental Health Collective. It feels like it's time for us at Carver to publicise the Mental Health Collective again through our newsletter and encourage that membership. And I'm sure those of you who know any relevant Solihull organisations will send the message out too. So thanks so much, Evan, for that. Usually at our meetings, we have Carol Andrew, who is our NHS representative, joining the meetings. So she's head of Place Partnerships, Solihull Place. She's on leave today, but she said at the next meeting, which I'm planning that we'll have an August meeting, she will update us around community integrator. Now, some of you may have been hearing that phrase, community integrator, and it is about developing integrated neighbourhood care. And it's one of the 6 transformation priorities of the ICS, and it's about primary care, social care, community health services, mental health services, and the VCSE all working in a joined up way around neighbourhoods. You might have seen there's information already coming out of Birmingham about how they're progressing the community integrator. In Solihull, a little bit far behind, but Carol is going to give us much more of an update on community integrator for Solihull at the next meeting. So you can look forward to that. But Evan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Jane just mentioned the next collective meeting is on the 20th of June, and Carol's going to present together with Jatinder Singh to talk about the community integrators across Birmingham and Solihull.
Brilliant. Okay, so you're going to get updated before we will be updated in August. So if you want to be updated ASAP, 20th of June is the time to do that. So Evan, I think you've put a link in the chat, haven't you? So if people want...
I've put links about the collective and about how to join.
Yeah.
I'll put something separate in about the 20th of June meeting.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And the only other thing from me was there's so many developments evolving through the ICS, but one of the other things just to put on your radar is a system-wide community engagement framework has been being developed. I don't know if anybody was in, apparently there was a meeting on the 18th of May in Solihull for people to be involved in discussion about that. Was anybody from Solihull involved in that or heard about it? No affirmatives. But that is that. I think the parameters of it are what good looks like for engaging communities, practical tools that engagement leads can draw on, methods for monitoring and evaluating the impact of VCSE work. So again, once I know any more about that framework, I will disseminate any information, and I'm sure we'll hear about it in due course. So that's all the updates from me. Aside from the next meeting, I'm planning to go for some date in August. Anybody else got any updates while we're all here? No. Well, that was an exceedingly quick meeting. So good to see everybody, and I'll circulate the presentation, and Kerry's just coming in, and the recording is for those who missed out on the meeting. So Kerry, do you want to just come in?
Yeah, it wasn't really an update, it was more of a comment. Evan sent out an email yesterday about the ICS briefing, and I attended that, obviously on Zoom I attended, and Justin Varney was going through the 10-year strategy then. I would encourage anybody to sign up to that, because whilst it was quite, from a clinical point of view, it was really also very interesting. So I've been to another briefing before, and they are good. So you can sign up, can't you, to get your Evan, sorry, you can sign up, can't you, to be able to get the invites directly. So
Kerry, yes, in principle, I think it's a little bit hazy in practice, because I only found out about it the day before. I have tried to get on the invitation list for the, so that I can tell people about it with more headroom. And there is, or will be, a recording available of Justin's presentation. So when I have that link, I'll communicate it as well. But just prompted by your question, if I'm able to find how you sign up properly to get these things in advance, I'll also pass that on.
Brilliant, thank you, Evan. And I've seen there's a link to the 5th of July event in the chat. If I can bring in Emma, who's got her hand up. Hi, Emma. We can't hear you at the moment. Still can't hear you. Do you want to put anything in the chat? Okay, we'll wait and see what Emma has put in the chat. And I'm just going to look what else is here. Evan has put information about the Mental Health Collective. Steph has said she's going to mention she's part of the ICS comms meeting, so she's going to bring that up. I think that's everything that I can see currently. Emma, first week in post in NHS, and first time I've used Zoom on the PC, so sound issues. So ICS briefings is run by MT team. You can sign up via communications.vissolicb@nhs.net. Okay, I shall, when we send around the presentation, we'll send these links around as well. Thanks, Emma. So I think that is actually everything.
Actually, seeing Emma's name there, and apologies for these false finishes again. You asked Jane if anyone had been at the Moorhouse Community Engagement Framework meeting in Solihull in the middle of May. I've also asked that question direct to Moorhouse, and I've asked how VCFSE can engage with the iteration and shaping programme that Moorhouse mentioned on the webinar on the 8th of July. So Emma, if you're able to help with that, I'd be grateful. I'll forward on the email I sent to Katrina, and if you can help, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, we have a colleague, Emma, who goes to the comms meetings. So as much as possible, we are trying to kind of tie communication, or when we get communication, to make sure we disseminate that. But it is a complex environment. So as much as possible, it's about all of us trying to coordinate the communications and still just really ensuring that Solihull is represented in the ICS. Oh, a few more comments. I think Emma was first, and then Chet. So Emma seems
so I'm hoping, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So thank you. And hi, Evan. Sorry, I just dropped off there. The wonderful joys of technology and failing abysmally at the time when you really need it. So I've just joined the ICB to lead all of its stakeholder and community engagement work. So the big project that I will be picking up is continuing the work that's been done to date by Moorhouse. So the work has been led by Dominic Benson and Moorhouse. They've had an 8 to 9 week consultation period with a number of various people that are involved in engagement and other organisations across the system-wide area. And now the next steps will be putting a series of recommendations together on how to then take this project forward. That needs to be approved by the executive board at the ICB before we can start moving on from there. But that would then look like, again, working with the really key people across the system that are involved in engagement activities to come together to get to a point where we've got an agreed framework on how we do all of our engagement activity, how we're making sure we're doing things like avoiding duplication in terms of our engagement work. We're ensuring we're meeting all of the strategic priorities of the system in terms of our engagement work, and just having clear processes and policies in place that are followed by everyone. So we've got a really consistent approach to engagement. I hope that helps. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I am planning to be in touch with people across the system within the next couple of weeks. Once we've got that sign off from the executive board here. So you will be hearing from me. If you don't, I mean, more than happy for my email address to be shared around so people know who I am and that they can start making contact.
Were you on the webinar last Thursday?
I was.
Because Christina certainly built you up as the key person for making all this happening.
That's it, exactly. So yeah, Morehouse is kind of a part of the project has come to an end, and then it's now for me to take forward the work that they've done to essentially to the implementation stage.
Emma, that is brilliant that you're here, so quickly in post. So, you're going to be that invaluable link to forums like this. So that's great.
Absolutely. Really keen to start getting to know everybody. I'm not from an NHS background. I've actually been working across the education sector for the last 6-7 years or so, but I did a lot of work when I was at the University of Birmingham, trying to promote all of its medical research in the media, and worked a lot across the different comms teams within Birmingham and Solihull, certainly within the NHS, but broader than that. I think it developed quite a good understanding of the sector and the issues. So I think this is a really important role that they've been waiting on for some time within the ICB. So a huge piece of work to take forward. But looking forward to working with everyone. I can see and already get a sense of the appetite that is there for the project.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And can you remind me of what your title is called?
Yes, if I pop it in the chat, then everyone can have that if that helps. I'll put my email address in there too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Emma. Good to meet you.
Thank you. And you. Yeah, I'm really pleased that I signed up to this session. So
yeah, really
great.
Pleased to have you.
Thank
okay,
you.
Everybody. Well, I think that's everything, unless there's any last minutes. So have a great rest of the afternoon. Good week, and we'll see each other. I'm not actually at the Leadership Alliance, but I hope all of that goes really well. It'll be interesting to hear the strategy, and I hope to catch up with that at some point. So thanks everybody as usual for your input, and see you all soon.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.